Okay, today we are going to discuss physical and chemical properties, as well as physical and chemical changes, and what makes a property different from a change. So first, physical properties. What I always like to, reflect on is if I'm dealing with a physical property, I know that I can use my senses to identify it. I could see it, touch it, hear it, smell it, feel it, using my senses to make descriptions. Another way that I always know that I'm dealing with a physical property is if I can use a tool, for example, a thermometer, to measure it. Like the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. I could use a thermometer to make that observation and having a physical property. There's lots of examples. These are some examples here: color, size, odor, luster, which is shine, hardness. There is a ton of ways that you can make physical descriptions to identify physical properties. Chemical properties are a little bit different. These have to deal with the molecule arrangement themselves. Certain atoms, when they're bonded together, allow for almost these abilities to take place. So, for example, things that are flammable have the molecular structure to allow them to be flammable. Not all things are flammable. Toxicity, substances like water are not poisonous to us. Substances like bleach are. And that's just depending on, what the molecule arrangements look like. I really like this visual because it gives a really pretty clear difference of the two. The physical property doesn't change what the object is. For example, this apple is red, all right? It's round shape. Those are physical properties. What the chemical property is, it tells you what it can do. So it's not necessarily a change, but it tells you what it's capable of doing or what it has the ability to do. So let's talk about those changes. Here is an example of a physical change: liquid water to water vapor. When heat is added, we can get states of matter changes. However, do you notice that the water molecules on the liquid water side of this equation are the same as water vapor? That is because this is a physical change. The molecular structure has stayed the same even when the change occurred. Now, natural gas burning is a very common example of a chemical change. If you notice, we have two types of molecules here. And when the change occurs, this arrow always represents a change. And when this change occurred, the molecules rearranged themselves and formed new substances. That's always an indicator that a chemical change has taken place. So let's talk about the differences between a property and between a change. I like to identify properties as characteristics or abilities, or then changes are processes taking place, like actions that are happening. So some examples of physical properties are characteristics or abilities. We have shape, smell, measurable properties like mass, volume, and density, as well as melting point or boiling point. The ability to rust, the ability to be flammable. Those are examples of chemical properties. Now let's look at some processes. Tearing paper, a state of matter change, or dyeing something like tie-dye or adding food coloring to water. The molecular structure of those substances involved are not changing. That's what makes them physical. We also could say they're reversible. Like if you melted ice, you could always freeze it again. If you dyed your shirt, you can always try to get the dye out, remove it with a process. Bubbling is a lot of the times an indicator of a chemical change. Burning flame as well. Also something called a precipitate, which is a new substance that's formed. We're going to delve into that a little bit next week. Okay, so with your homework and with your illustrations, this is kind of an example of how you could complete yours. So I have properties examples. Here's an example of a chemical property: toxicity. I've said what it is, what kind of property it is, and that it is the ability to poison living things. For example, water does not do this. My example from a physical property is yellow color. I've observed this with my eyes, and that's why I've indicated it's a physical property. You'll need 5 examples of each. Same thing goes for changes. So chemical change, my example that I've used is combustion, which is essentially the ability to burn. And the burning that's taking place, the change, is the process of combustion. The wood turns into ash. This is irreversible, and the atoms rearrange from how they started before the burning took place. Physical change, melting, a state of matter changes, these are reversible. In this example of water melting, ice cubes melting into liquid water, the atoms are not rearranging, they are staying the same. We are going to explore a lot of different examples as you guys move through your stations and create your projects. So let me know if you have any questions.